Now I'm out here right beside a creek bed, and this creek bed soil is a combination of sand and clay. And you can feel how slick it is, and that's how you know it's got clay in it. If it feels slick and pasty. Okay, so here's a real good example. You've got sand here and you've got clay here. And you can see how that sand is sitting right on top of that really, really fine clay. And that clay holds water really, really well. So a lot of these creeks and things out here hold water for a long period of time, even if it's not flowing, because of the clay-based soil. Okay, so I've got a 5-gallon bucket here that I'm mixing this in. And I'm not too worried about impurities in this stuff like I would be if I were making pottery. But I'm not going to make a pot. And I want this stuff fairly thick. I've added some water to it from the creek down there. And if I have to add a little more clay to it, because I think it's too wet, I will. But I want this stuff to be a pretty good thick consistency. And I don't want it to have a bunch of water in it. I'm getting ready to cut this small sapling oak down behind me. I've got to use it for a wheel and lean project for a tent setup that I'm using for the new television show on Pathfinder Outdoor Journal. What I want to talk about real quick before we do this, we're going to utilize this part of this tree to make ourselves a form. Here in just a few minutes, you'll understand what I'm talking about when we get to that portion of the video. But what I want to talk about is, just for a minute, conservation of resources and being a good steward to the land. You know, this is my property. I can cut down anything and everything I want to cut down out here. But if I'm going to cut a tree down, I want to utilize that tree to the best of its ability, the whole tree that I can use. I'm going to use this tree as a pole for my wheel and lean, and I will transport that pole if I have to transport that lean to another location like the gathering or something like that. Now, in the days of classic camping, they would cut the poles for their tarps or tents everywhere they went to a new camp. They just cut new poles, and that's okay if you're traveling long distance. But if you are just going to set up at an event, or if you're just using things for videos or for a television shoot where you can actually transport poles and you don't have to cut trees down off the landscape for no reason, that's what you want to do. And I just wanted to throw that in real quick so that the viewers that are watching this that are young understand that you just don't haphazardly go through the woods chopping down trees. We're going to utilize this tree for something in this video, and then I'm going to utilize the pole of this tree for several other videos, events, and locations for a wheel and lean. You know, I'm really becoming fond of these H&B Forge axles. Things are just fantastic. That's a fine axe right there, fellas. I gotta tell you. Love that thing. Okay, as I was processing this tree down, cutting it off with my bow saw here, getting ready to cut it to length, this piece of inner bark stripped out of the bottom right here. Here's the outer bark, and here's the inner bark. And this inner bark is exactly what we needed for the project we're getting ready to make. And this is very pliable when it's wet, this inner bark, and we can make almost a perfect circle out of this. And I'm going to show you how that's done. And we're going to use this for a mold. So we want to take this piece of inner bark now. We want to keep it damp while we're working it. We don't want to let it dry out, and we want to make it thin so that it is pliable. And the thinner we get this, the more pliable it's going to become. If we can do that without destroying the integrity of the fibers, we should be able to bend this into a circle. And again, the wetter we keep this, the better off we're going to be. We're going to try to bend this all the way around into a fairly tight circle like this and overlap it. Okay, my original plan was to use a Cooper's notch on this piece of oak, but I'm not going to be able to do that because it's too short. So we're going to work with what we got and improvise. As long as we've kept this wet, it'll be pretty pliable and we can bend it about anywhere we want to. And if we can get it tied together and held secure, we can then bend it so it's more round. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to just take a quick timber hitch here. And start this and lash it with a timber hitch. Just like this. And I'm really going to try to crank down on this thing because I don't want it coming undone. This is exactly the way they used to make hoops for wooden buckets and things like that, except they used what was called a Cooper's notch. Like I said, I wanted to show you that today. It didn't work out, so we're just going to do what we have to. Now we'll just put a quick clove hitch in the end of this thing to hold it together. Okay. Now we should be able to bend this about any way we want to make a pretty round circle out of it. Just like this. We'll get all this crap out of our way. And that's going to be our mold to make a better counterweight for our pump drill. Once we've got this mold about as round as we want it, and it's pretty close, not too bad off, I'm going to lay it right out here on a flat surface in the sun. I'm going to mix up this clay and sand. I want this stuff to be pretty thick. Not too thick, but I want it to be pretty thick. I'm going to fill that up just like that. Pat it down, get any air bubbles or anything like that out of it. Just like that. And we're going to leave that thing in the sun for a couple days to get nice and hard. Now before that thing sets up, I'm going to take a stick and I'm just going to kind of work it down in here to the bottom. Just like this, because we want a hole in the middle of this counterweight when we're done, and this will give us that hole. Now we just got to be patient, let it set up and dry. Okay, I came by here a couple hours ago and I pulled this plug out of the center of this wheel, and it's shrunken up quite a bit now and stiffened up, and I think it's going to fall right out of this form. Pretty loose in there. Don't quite want to come out. If I'm easy with it, I might be able to get it out of there. I'd like to get it out so that it will dry completely without the form on it. So I'm just going to kind of take it real slow and easy here. Almost got it. Just kind of working the edges here. They want to come up just a little bit, and that's okay. Not that big of a deal because I'm going to smooth this thing out a little bit anyway, all the way around on this edge. Okay, I've got an aluminum bush pot here. It's got some water in it. And I'm going to, now that I've got the mold off of this, I'm going to just very easy and carefully come through here with a little bit of water and just kind of dress these edges up just like this. Just smooth them out a little bit. Smooth this stone out. Areas where it looks like it might want a crack or anything like that. Just like this. Just like I would if I were making a clay pot. Except I'm hopefully going to have this thing's going to dry to where I'm not going to have to do that. I'm not going to have to fire it like a clay pot. So I'm just going to smooth it all off. Get it as round as I can. And as uniform as I can. And then I'm just going to leave it out here in the sun. And hopefully it'll dry hard enough to work for a flywheel. We'll find that out in a few days. Okay, a couple other things I did probably worth mentioning here real quick on this video. I cut this longer spindle out of a piece of rosewood. It's fairly straight, still green, so I can straighten it as it dries. But that's going to give me a longer distance for that T-bar to ride up and down. The other thing I'm going to do is reduce the width of that T-bar, which will reduce the angle of the string and allow more wraps to get more revolutions for each time it rides up and down. So that's my next step as well, hopefully on this flywheel when it's dry. We'll make a complete new set basically with this flywheel and this spindle and see how that works. The other thing I did today was I ordered just a 6-inch grinding wheel off Amazon. I got to thinking about it, and I just do stuff until I think I own it. I do it and do it and do it and do it and change it and modify it and try different stuff until I think I own the skill. That's kind of the way I am with all the stuff in bushcraft and survival. So I'm thinking about this stone. I'm thinking it weighs enough to be a counterweight all by itself. It's a sanding stone, so it can make the drill points for the drill if I want to use it for drilling with a bone point or a metal point. I can use it to sand down the shaft into pieces with because it's an abrasive sanding stone. I can use it to sharpen my axe or my tools with. It's a counterbalance of weight already for this set. And it's already in one piece. So that's a very multifunctional piece of kit. That's only going to be about 6 inches in diameter, and it can be used if I wanted to use this drill in a base camp situation for fire starting. I can use that instead of having to worry about making this. If I only carried that and nothing else, I'm pretty confident I can make a full set with that inside of 30 minutes and have a fire in 5. Okay folks, I'm Dave Canterbury at the Pathfinder School, and I appreciate you joining me out here for another segment on this pump drill. This is going to be part 2, and I'm going to continue with it until I've pretty much wore it out in my own mind and I can do it anytime I want to on the fly. That's the key to, like I said, owning the skill. I appreciate your views. I appreciate your support. I thank you for everything you do for my school, for our family and business, for all of our instructors, sponsors, affiliates, and friends. And I'll be back with another video as soon as I can. Thanks, guys.